Hey, I want to talk about giving feedback. But I want to talk about it in the context of recruiting. So whether you're a recruiter, agency recruiter, like I am, or whether you're an in-house TA, or whether you're HR or a hiring manager, but just in the context of the recruiting process, because it's a fundamental part. You know, you hop on LinkedIn and so many people are complaining about going through an interview process, not getting feedback, you know, like, or they've taken ages to get feedback, or et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to talk about the importance of it. And firstly, I mean, I think of it as a gift. Like, what a pleasure to be able to give someone feedback that will help them grow, improve their interview technique, help them get their next job. You know, so it's a gift to give feedback. Like, what a pleasure. The trick with feedback is you actually have to give it. So, you know, don't forget that. But in recruiting, like, just obviously context, and I go through this all the time, right? It's like and if you're watching and you've been in a process with us, I mean, like, I try and do it like the minute I get feedback, or I'm chasing for feedback from a client that's hiring to the hiring manager. I want to keep people informed all the time during an interview process, and sometimes, you know, people are traveling, whatever's going on, and it's like the processes elongate and you haven't heard for ages. And the candidate who's invested a long time in an interview process, like, you go for an interview and it's like, 1-2 hours prep time, thinking time, an hour interview, downloading, hour 2. So I really appreciate that someone for each interview has probably invested 6-7 hours of their lives in it. And they don't get paid for that. And so, you know, as a good friend of mine, Glenn Martin, once mentioned, or said, a great quote is, you know, pay people back with feedback, which is so important. So I always think of it like that. And so for me, being essentially in the middle of candidates and hiring managers, you know, communication is key. Letting people know where they're at, so their expectations are set. And sometimes things take a while, sometimes things don't. And then feedback is interesting. So on an interview process, I mean, we have different stages. It's like, you know, your CV gets sent and they don't want to see you. So limited feedback, you know, it's often about the CV. So, you know, the technical stuff, or just they've taken a view. And again, like, I think so much of recruiting is subjective and nuanced. It's like, well, what does a good CV look like? What does a bad CV look like? Or what does a job hopper look like? A year in a job, 2 years, 3 years, moved every 4. I mean, you know, subjective. Or what is a good cultural fit? Or, they're too experienced for the job. Oh, they're not quite experienced enough. Or we think this is going to be a lateral move. Like, what does that even mean? And so a lot of the time, the feedback is very subjective at that early stage. And it's like, okay, you know, you kind of, there's not a huge amount that the candidate can work with and stuff. It also goes the other way. Like, we're headhunting a lot for clients, and, you know, the client's like, well, everyone's going to want to work with us, of course. And you're like, okay, you know, and you go through and you speak with people, and actually feedback on you know, the front line is a bit different. Oh, they're the company, they don't give us feedback, and I'm not sure, and, you know, there's a lot of stuff. So anyway, we give feedback to our clients and help them evolve the story and all of those things. So, and then I think as it goes on, I have this thing called the candidate bill of rights. And I think there's certain levels of service and feedback that people should get depending on where they've been in the stage in the process. And so, you know, if you just applied for a job ad, you know, maybe it's an automated email, or maybe you get an email from HR or from the recruiter, and fair enough. And then as you start interviewing, I think, you know, people need to give better quality feedback as time goes on, and appreciate that people who have invested time in their interview process. So if people have met you, like, spend some time, and it doesn't take long, you know. And again, a lot of it is subjective, and it's like, I'm not sure or there might not be a cultural fit, and, you know, a lot of the time, and we just do leadership roles, exec recruiting. And a lot of the time, you know, if you've gotten invited for an interview, on paper, broadly, you can do the job. Like, broadly, you know, you've probably got the skills. They wouldn't have invited you otherwise, you know, CFO role, CTO, CFO, whatever. But they're, you know, like, they can see the CV. And so much of it then is down to the human skills. The stuff that sometimes the little magic stardust you can't quite describe, like, so many stakeholders, like, does someone think you'll fit with them? Or, you meet a bunch of people and some like you, some don't, or you gel with some, you gel with. So a lot of the time it's a little bit subjective and there's not always really good quality feedback to give, however you want to describe it. But again, it's a subjective view or opinion. Yeah, and even then though, if you can give some good quality feedback, people really appreciate it. And, people always, they remember a bad experience more than a good experience. But I would treat candidates like your best customer, and you can't go too wrong. Give them all the feedback you can, and people remember and appreciate. And it'll probably make recruiting way easier because they won't be jumping on, some platform saying how bad your interview process was, or, so it's just always good. Like, be kind, be considerate, be empathetic, thank people for their time, give as much good quality feedback as you can, and you can't go too wrong. Hope that helps. It's important to do, easy to get wrong, but so easy to get right. So get on it. Thank you so much for joining. Appreciate all of your feedback, thoughts, comments, all of that stuff. Don't forget to subscribe in all the usual places: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of that cool stuff. Feel free to leave a review and DM me with any feedback. Much appreciated.